Yo, what is up? What is up, everybody, boy? It's your boy Braemovinnn in this bitch, bro. And, bro, I'm not gonna lie, bro. I gotta figure some shit out, bro. Nigga, I went from getting a couple hundred views to getting a couple views, literally. So, I'm gonna try to expand my reactions. Probably try a little more gaming. And, yeah. And I'm trying to post more on TikTok, too. Y'all niggas go tap in with all the motherfucking socials. But today we are going to be react to serial killers who are police officers.
Gerard John Schaefer Jr.
Let's get it.
The killer cop. July 21st, 1972. Two teenage girls, Nancy Trotter and Pamela Wells, were hitchhiking near Fort Lauderdale, Florida, when a police officer pulled over and offered them a ride. He seemed official, professional, safe. He was a Martin County Sheriff's deputy.
I'm sorry, bro. If I grew up in the 70s, bro, I wouldn't trust nobody, bro. Cause, nigga, if I grew up in the 70s, bro, I'd be D1 fucking criminal, bro. What you mean there's no camera, there's no footage, there's no microphones, there's no way for y'all to trace shit back to me. Bro, I would have been on some demon timing. I would have my guard up 24/7.
In his patrol car. It was a decision they barely survived. Schaefer drove them to a remote wooded area, claiming he was taking them somewhere safe. Instead, he forced them from the car at gunpoint, marched them into the woods, tied them to trees, and placed nooses around their necks. He left them there, terrified and helpless, saying he'd return. But before he could come back to finish what he'd started, another officer happened upon the scene during a routine patrol. Trotter and Wells were rescued. Schaefer was arrested. He was fired from the sheriff's department immediately. But investigators quickly realized that Schaefer's attempted abduction of Trotter and Wells wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a pattern that had been going on for years. While searching Schaefer's home, police found a horrifying collection.
Bro, how do y'all let shit like... I mean, it was the 70s, so at the same time, like I said, bro, you can't really trace nothing back. So I kind of do see how you can let this shit slide for years. Just because, bro, it's the 70s. There's not shit you can do about it.
Clothing and personal items belonging to dozens of young women. They found graphic stories and drawings depicting torture, murder, and mutilation. They found detailed descriptions of hangings, stabbings, and sexual violence. Some appeared to be fiction. Others were clearly accounts of real crimes. In September 1972,
Man, she got some yams on her.
The decomposed bodies of two teenage girls, Susan Place and Georgia Jessup, were discovered on Hutchinson Island. They'd been missing since April. Both had been tied to trees, tortured, raped, shot, and hacked to death. The method matched exactly what Schaefer had attempted with Trotter and Wells. Physical evidence...
Ain't gonna lie, but we gotta get this nigga up out of here. What the fuck?
...him to the crime scene. Schaefer was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder in 1973 and sentenced to 2 life terms. But investigators believe
yeah, that nigga had to go.
Personal items belonging to numerous women were found in his possession. He was suspected in the disappearances of at least 30 young women and girls across Florida. What's particularly chilling about Schaefer is that he'd been using his authority as a police officer to commit these crimes for years before his arrest. He'd pick up hitchhikers, runaways, and young women traveling alone. His badge made them trust him. His patrol...
Hold on. Hello?
If I left my wallet there, see if it's in my bucket or in my room.
It's in your bucket.
Oh shoot. Okay.
Alright, deuce. My bad.
Car made them feel safe, and he used that trust to torture and kill them. Schaefer was also known as the Hangman because of his signature method. He'd bind his victims to trees with nooses around their necks, a sadistic ritual that gave him a sense of power and control. He later claimed, in letters and stories he wrote from prison, that he'd been killing since 1965, when he was just 19 years old. He boasted of killing women on 3 continents, and claimed his victim count was...
But like, bro, can you even blame the nigga, bro? It says 85, I think that's a typo, but bro, it's 1965, bro. I'm telling you, bro, I would be the biggest fucking G of all time if I was born in the 60s or 70s, bro. Cause, bro, as long as you play your cards right, bro, nobody's gonna know. See, he's a dumbass. He kept doing the same method over and over. If you would have switched it up, niggas wouldn't have been able to trace it back to you. But still, you still a crazy ass nigga and your ass gotta go, gang.
Between 80 and 110, though he could never remember exact details. Even in prison, Schaefer remained disturbing. He wrote graphic fiction that many believed were thinly veiled accounts of his real crimes. He filed frivolous lawsuits against anyone who called him a serial killer, despite the overwhelming evidence. He even claimed to have been friends with Ted Bundy, who was incarcerated in the same Florida prison, though Bundy dismissed Schaefer as a wannabe. On December 3rd, 1995,
But there's no way they put this motherfucking Ted Bundy in the same jail.
Attacked him. The inmate slit his throat and stabbed him over 40 times, focusing on his eyes. Gerard Schaefer died at age 49. The man who'd used his badge to prey on vulnerable young women, who'd tortured and killed for his own sadistic pleasure, met a violent end behind the same bars that had held many of his victims' stories. Mikhail Popkov, the werewolf. June 2012, Angarsk, Russia. Police investigators were conducting mandatory DNA testing of current and former police officers in the Irkutsk region. They were searching for a serial killer who'd been terrorizing the area for 2 decades. When they tested the DNA of Mikhail Popkov, a 48-year-old former officer, they got a match. The friendly, charismatic cop who everyone loved had been hiding a monstrous secret. Between 1992 and 2010, Popkov murdered at least 83 women.
Nah, that's crazy, bro. From the 90s to now, bro, you should not get away with shit like that. All right, maybe in the 90s, definitely in the 2000s, bro, you should not be getting away with shit like this, bro. 2026, you're not getting away with this shit 2026. That's a damn fact. But, bro, what do you mean this nigga caught 83
Russia's
heads?
most prolific serial killer in history. He surpassed even Andrei Chikatilo, the notorious butcher of Rostov. And he did it all while working as a police officer and later as a security guard. Popkov's method was terrifyingly simple and effective. He'd patrol the streets of Angarsk in his police car or his personal vehicle, a Lada 4x4 off-road vehicle commonly used by law enforcement. He'd offer rides to women late at night, particularly those who were intoxicated or appeared to be sex workers. They'd get in the car because he was a cop. They trusted the badge. Once they were in his vehicle, he'd drive them to remote wooded areas. There, he'd attack them with whatever weapon he had available: axes, hammers, screwdrivers, knives. He'd rape them, mutilate them, and leave their bodies in forests, along roadsides or in cemeteries. Some victims had over 150 stab wounds. The brutality.
Bro, how much anger do you have to have built up to stab a nigga 150 times? Like, bro, you know how mad you gotta be to stab a nigga 150 fucking times?
Was so extreme that Russian media nicknamed him the werewolf and the Angarsk maniac. What makes Popkov's case even more disturbing is that he investigated his own crimes. He was assigned to work on cases involving missing women and bodies that he himself had left behind. He'd interview suspects, handle evidence from his own crime scenes, and participate in police discussions about the killer they were hunting. He was literally investigating himself. Popkov later claimed he was motivated by a perceived infidelity. In 1992, he believed he caught his wife having an affair. Though she denied it, Popkov became consumed with rage toward women he deemed immoral. He saw himself as a cleaner, purging the streets of prostitutes and women living what he considered debauched lives. For years, police had no leads. Bodies kept appearing, but the killer seemed impossible to catch. Then, investigators noticed a pattern. Tire tracks from a Lada 4x4, a vehicle commonly used by police, kept appearing at crime scenes. That's when they decided to DNA test current and former officers. Popkov's DNA matched evidence from multiple murders. When confronted, Popkov confessed, not just to a few murders, but to dozens. In 2015, he was convicted of 22 murders and sentenced to life in prison.
Damn, bro,
Then,
2015? Oh shit, hold on, they're not even done.
He confessed to 59 more killings. He was convicted of 56 additions.
Yo, nigga, CIA swept this shit under the rug. Why the fuck don't I know about this? 2017, this nigga had 56 murders. But that shit should have been everywhere. What? Oh, it was in a whole different country. That's why. They said this shit was in
Additional murders in
Oh no, but they didn't say this was in the USA. That's
second
why.
life sentence. The man who'd been trusted to protect his community, who attended police functions and was described by colleagues as funny and charming, had been one of history's most prolific serial killers. His wife and daughter had no idea. His colleagues had no idea. He'd hidden in plain sight for 18 years, using his badge as both a shield and a weapon. Mikhail Popkov is now 60 years old, serving his sentence in Russia's Black Dolphin prison, one of the country's most brutal facilities. He'll spend the first 15 years in solitary confinement, and he'll never leave prison alive.
Damn, that's crazy. 15 years of solitary confinement. 15 years of just being by yourself. No, very little noise, white room, 4 walls around you. And that is your life for 15 years. I ain't gonna lie, that's crazy.
Gennady Mikosevich,
But he
the
deserved it,
volunteer
though.
officer killer. Between 1971 and 1985, the city of Vitebsk in the Soviet Union was terrorized by a serial killer targeting young women. 36 women were confirmed murdered, though the real number may be closer to 60. They were raped, strangled, and left in various locations around the city. The police had suspects, they had confessions, they even had convictions. There was just one problem. They had the wrong people. Gennady Mikosevich was a volunteer police officer, a member of the Voluntary People's Druzhina, a citizen patrol organization in the USSR. He was often assigned to investigate the very murders he'd committed. He'd interview suspects, handle evidence, and participate in case discussions. And when the pressure mounted to solve the crimes, he helped ensure other men took the fall. 13 innocent men were arrested and convicted for Mikosevich's murders. 12 were sent to forced labor camps in Siberia.
Bro, that's probably like one of my biggest. Hold on, I'm gonna let this
Great
play out.
name, but your voice doesn't quite match it.
We have a fix.
Voice mod gives you overall.
Brutal
Ain't gonna lie, bro. That's probably one of my biggest fears in life. Like, imagine you just get accused for a crime you didn't even do. And it's not even like you got to pay a little fine or just go to jail for a couple years. Like, imagine you get life in jail for some shit you didn't do. Like, that's actually crazy.
gulags
That's
where many
crazy as
died.
fuck.
One man was tortured into confessing, then executed by firing squad for a crime he didn't commit.
Like, that is crazy as fuck, bro. He was probably screaming for his life. He was probably, oh, I didn't do it. Y'all got the wrong guy. And then they just killed his ass, bro.
Mikosevich watched it all happen and said nothing. He kept killing. What makes Mikosevich's case particularly horrifying is how he manipulated the Soviet justice system. He knew exactly how investigations worked, how confessions were obtained, how cases were built. He used that knowledge to frame others, to deflect suspicion, and to continue his crimes for 14 years. But eventually, investigators began to notice patterns. Despite having different suspects in custody, the murders continued. The methods were too similar, too consistent to be the work of multiple killers. Someone realized that all these crimes had to be connected, committed by a single person.
But, bro, so what y'all do with the niggas y'all already locked up, bro? Y'all just said, oh, we realized it's not y'all and let them out? Because there's no way them little niggas stayed in that cell.
Worried that he
Or at
was
them
about to be
camps or whatever.
discovered, Mikosevich tried one last manipulation. He sent an anonymous letter to police, signed Patriot of Vitebsk, claiming that the murders were the result of the corruption of Soviet society. He thought this would throw investigators off his trail, or make them dismiss the cases as political rather than criminal. It backfired spectacularly. Police began analyzing handwriting samples from every man in the region. They compared the anonymous letter to writing samples from over 500,000 males in the oblast. The analysis pointed directly to Gennady Mikosevich. When confronted with the
I didn't
evidence,
even know they could do
Mikosevich
that.
confessed. He admitted to 36 murders and described how he'd used his position as a volunteer officer to commit the crimes and cover his tracks. He showed no remorse for the innocent men he'd sent to labor camps, or the one who'd been executed. Mikosevich was sentenced to death and sent to prison. Reports indicate he committed suicide while awaiting execution, though some accounts suggest he may have been killed by other inmates or guards who were disgusted by his crimes and his betrayal of the badge. His case became the first serial killer case publicly acknowledged by Soviet state media. For years, the USSR had denied that serial killers even existed within their borders, claiming such crimes were a product of capitalist society. Mikosevich's arrest and confession shattered that propaganda and revealed the deep corruption within Soviet law enforcement. At least 36 families lost daughters, sisters, and mothers to a man
Damn,
who wore a
bro.
police uniform. And 13 innocent men had their lives destroyed by that same man, sent to gulags, or executed for crimes they never committed. Justice came too late for all of them. Antoinette Frank, the officer who killed
Fuck!
Money.
Fuck, bro. I was hoping there was no black people on this list. I was hoping there was no black people on
March
this
4th,
list.
1995, New Orleans, Louisiana. Police responded to a shooting at the Kim Ann restaurant in New Orleans East. When they arrived, they found 3 people dead. Officer Ronald Williams, who'd been working security at the restaurant, and siblings Kwang Vu and Ha Vu, members of the family that owned the establishment. It appeared to be a robbery gone wrong, but when investigators started piecing together the evidence, they discovered something shocking. The killer wasn't a stranger. It was Antoinette Frank, a New Orleans Police Department officer who'd been working with Williams that night. And this wasn't her first time robbing the Kim Un restaurant. Antoinette Frank had joined the NOPD in 1993, despite multiple red flags during her psychological evaluation and background check. She'd failed the psychological screening twice and was noted to have poor impulse control and questionable judgment. But the department was desperate for officers and hired her anyway. It was a decision that would cost 3 people their lives. Frank had befriended the Vu family, who owned the restaurant, and she'd often stop by while on patrol. She seemed friendly, trustworthy. In reality, she was casing the place. In November 1994, Frank and her accomplice, Rogers Lacaze, had already robbed the restaurant once. The Vu family never reported it because they didn't want trouble with the police. But Frank wasn't satisfied. She decided to rob them again, this time with Lacaze. On the night of March 4th, Frank was supposed to be on duty patrolling with Officer Ronald Williams. Instead, she arranged to meet Lacaze at the restaurant for another robbery. When Frank and Lacaze entered the Kim Un restaurant, they didn't know that Williams was inside working a security detail. When Williams saw Frank with Lacaze and realized what was happening, Frank made a choice. She shot her fellow officer in the head, killing him instantly. Then she and Lacaze murdered Quang Vu and Ha Vu to eliminate witnesses. What Frank didn't know was that someone had survived. Chow Vu, a sibling, had hidden in a walk-in cooler during the shooting. After Frank and Lacaze fled, Chow...
Bro, this little kid just watched 3 people get slimed out in front of her.
emerged and called 911. When police arrived at the scene, Frank had the audacity to return in her patrol car, pretending to respond to the call like any other officer. She walked into the crime scene and asked what happened, trying to appear shocked and concerned. But Xiao Vu identified her immediately. Frank was arrested on the spot. The evidence against her was overwhelming. Ballistics matched her service weapon to the murders. Lacaze confessed and implicated her. Witnesses placed her at the scene. In September 1995, Antoinette Frank was convicted of 3 counts of first-degree murder and armed robbery. She was sentenced to death. For over 25 years, Frank has been on death row at the Louisiana Correctional Institute for Women, one of only 2.
25 years? What is taking forever to just kill her, nigga? What the fuck? Just kill her.
Of first-degree murder and armed robbery. She was sentenced to death. For over 25 years, Frank has been on death row at the Louisiana Correctional Institute for Women, one of only 2 women on Louisiana's death row. She's exhausted most of her appeals. She maintains her innocence, claiming she was framed, but the evidence against her remains irrefutable. Antoinette Frank represents one of the most brazen examples of a police officer using their badge not just to kill, but to rob and murder for financial gain. She betrayed her fellow officer, killed innocent people, and then tried to investigate her own crime scene. She was 23 years old when she committed these murders, making her one of the youngest
So
cops
damn,
turned
she
killers
probably
in
like...
American history.
Oh
She's
damn,
now
this was in
52.
America? Damn.
Still waiting for an execution.
Oh yeah, they
date
did say
that may or may not
Louisiana.
ever come.
Explaining complex topics can be challenging. Highlight the text you want to simplify and let Grammarly rewrite it.
Norbert
But I ain't gonna lie, bro. Would y'all rather do life in jail or just die? Me personally, bro, I would just die, bro. Bro, if a judge told me I had life in jail, I'm not serving over a week of that sentence. That's all I'm saying, bro. I'm just ending shit, bro.
Polka, the Hammer Killer, March 1984, Germany. Police officer Norbert Pohelka's daughter died from cancer, leaving his family devastated and buried under approximately $400,000 in medical debt. Pohelka was a veteran officer with years of service, a respected member of his community, but the financial pressure broke something inside him. Between May 1984 and October 1985, a series of eerily similar crimes terrorized West Germany. A masked assailant would...
But that's what I've realized with all these serial killers, bro. They all do the same shit over and over, and that's how they end up getting caught. But like, you gotta switch it. Hold on. Let me not make it seem like I'm glorifying this. I'm saying, like, if you doing stupid shit, you gotta switch it up every now and then. You feel me? You feel what I'm saying?
rob banks using a specific method. He'd smash the teller window with a sledgehammer, demand money, then flee in a stolen car. Hours or days later, the owner of that stolen car would be found dead, shot in the head, usually in a wooded area near the bank. It happened at least 3 times, and investigators realized they were dealing with a serial killer. But this wasn't a typical serial killer motivated by psychological compulsion or sexual gratification. This was someone killing to cover their tracks during robberies, someone methodical and calculating. The police investigation was extensive. They analyzed the crime scenes, the ballistics, the patterns, and slowly, the evidence began pointing in a direction no one wanted to believe, toward one of their own. Norbert Polka fit the profile. He had access to weapons. He knew how investigations worked. He understood forensics and crime scene analysis. And he desperately needed money. When investigators dug deeper, they found connections between Polka and the crimes. Before police could arrest him, Polka made his final choice. He committed suicide, leaving behind a note that many interpreted as a confession, though he never explicitly admitted to the murders. His death ended the investigation and closed the cases, but it left many questions unanswered. Investigators believe Polka was responsible for at least 3 murders connected to his bank robberies, possibly more. His family's financial desperation had driven him to robbery, and his need to avoid capture had turned him into a killer. What's particularly tragic about Polka's case is how it started. He wasn't a sadistic psychopath or a power-hungry predator. He was a father trying to pay for his daughter's medical treatment, a man crushed by debt in a system that failed his family. But that doesn't excuse
so
what
much
he
better
became.
ways you can
He
get that
murdered
money,
innocent
bro.
people, stealing their cars and their lives just to cover up his robberies. Norbert Polka's case serves as a dark reminder that even those who start with understandable motivations can descend into unforgivable acts. The badge he wore was meant to protect people. Instead, he used his knowledge as an officer to kill them and evade justice. His suicide meant he never faced trial, never answered for his crimes, and never gave his victims' families the closure they deserved. Joseph DeAngelo, the Golden State Killer, April 24th, 2018. A quiet suburban neighborhood in Sacramento, California. Police surrounded a modest home and arrested a 72-year-old former mechanic named Joseph DeAngelo. His neighbors described him as a grumpy old man who yelled at people to stay off his lawn. They had absolutely no idea they'd been living next to one of California's most prolific serial killers for decades. Between 1974 and 1986, DeAngelo terrorized California under multiple names: the Visalia Ransacker, the East Area Rapist, the Original Night
The
Stalker,
East
and
Area Rapist. Imagine that is what your nickname is, the East Area Rapist. Imagine having that label on you.
eventually the Golden State Killer. He committed at least 13 murders, over 50 rapes, and more than 120 burglaries across the state. He'd break into homes in the middle of the night, wake couples at gunpoint, bind them with elaborate knots, and assault them for hours. He'd eat food from their refrigerators, steal random items, and sometimes call victims months later just to taunt them.
How did y'all not catch this nigga?
What makes this case particularly disturbing is what DeAngelo was doing during many of these attacks. He was a police officer, first with the Exeter Police Department, then with the Auburn Police Department. By day, he was investigating burglaries and patrolling neighborhoods. By night, he was committing the exact crimes he was supposed to be solving. DeAngelo used his police training to perfection. He knew how to avoid detection, how to cover his tracks, how investigations worked. He'd study his victims for weeks, learning their schedules, their habits, their vulnerabilities.
That's scary,
He was
bro.
meticulous, calculated, and seemingly untouchable. His law enforcement career ended in 1979 when he was fired from the Auburn Police Department for shoplifting a hammer and dog repellent from a store. Ironically, these were tools he likely planned to use in his crimes. But even after losing his badge, DeAngelo didn't stop. He continued killing until 1986, then vanished into suburban anonymity for 32 years. What finally caught him? DNA and genetic genealogy. In 2018,
That old ass nigga. Bro, that old ass nigga done already lived his whole life, bro. He's 72 years old. You think he cares about going to jail or dying, bro? He did what he did. He lived his life, and y'all cut the nigga 32 years later. He don't give a fuck, bro. Bro, if he gassed too hard on air, that nigga's dying. Like,
investigators uploaded crime scene DNA to a public genealogy database, found distant relatives, built a family tree, and it led them straight to DeAngelo. When police surveilled him and collected his DNA from a discarded item, it was a perfect match. The man who'd used his badge as a weapon, who'd terrorized an entire state while wearing a uniform, had finally been caught by the very technology he never could have imagined. Joseph DeAngelo pleaded.
Boy, that old ass nigga was probably shook whenever he heard DNA and shit. They had his DNA and shit, bro. His old ass. Oh shit, I accidentally muted it. Hold
and multiple kidnappings. He's serving multiple life sentences without the possibility of parole. He's 80 years old now, and the families of his victims finally have justice, though it came 4 decades too late. If you'd like to see more stories like this,
Alright, bro, that's the end of this video, bro. Y'all boys like, comment, subscribe, follow all the socials right here. Y'all niggas have a good one.